This is PoE from A to Z. Path of Exile is well known for having a ton of active skill gems. However, how many of them are actually viable? I will try to conquer Path of Exile one skill at a time. The ultimate goal? Beating a pinnacle boss in solo self-found, meaning no trading, no handouts. And with that, let's begin. Welcome back, Exiles. The next skill on the list is Arc. Arc has for a long time had several different build guides and is very often recommended for beginners to start out with, due to the good build guides that are out there and the decent damage on the skill itself. As with all other skills, there's a plethora of different build guides that utilize several different mechanics. Due to the time restraint that I have of Crucible ending very soon, I went with a relatively safe build guide in hopes of beating the pinnacle boss before the end of Crucible. So for Arc, I chose to follow Enki's Arc Witch build guide, which is very often recommended. The link to the build guide is as always linked in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's get to leveling. Okay, here we go again. I will do as usual. I'll take the Witch class and I'll call myself A to Z Arc. I started Act 1 by picking up Fireball and thereafter linking it to Arcane Surge and headed straight towards Hillock to kill him off. From the Hillock reward, I took Freezing Pulse. As I've leveled most of my characters with Freezing Pulse before, I find it somewhat refreshing to go back and do the same thing. I linked Freezing Pulse to Arcane Surge and headed onwards to the Breaking Some Eggs quest. Thereafter, I went and killed Hailrake for his medicine chest. From Nessa's reward, I picked up the Quicksilver Flask, and from Tarkly, I took Frost Bomb, as it pairs well with Freezing Pulse, and also Frost Blink as my movement skill. After entering the lower prison, I went back to town and picked up added lightning damage support from Nessa to start leveling it, as I will use this support with Arc later on, and I also used it as a support for my Freezing Pulse with some extra damage. I also looted a pretty nice leveling one for my Freezing Pulse with a +1 to all cold spell skill gems. Thereafter, it was straight to Brutus. From the Brutus kill, I received Flame Dash as a reward, and I also picked up Vitality as one of my auras. Thereafter, it was straight to the ship graveyard to pick up the All Flame. From its reward, we will get Arc. And now I can finally play as a pure Arc build. I swapped out Freezing Pulse with Arc, so that Arc is linked to added lightning damage support and Arcane Surge. I swapped out Frost Bomb and bought Orb of Storms instead. Thereafter, it was straight to Merveil to finish up Act 1. I ended Act 1 at level 15 with the following passive skill tree. In Act 2, I did as per usual and killed all of the bandits for the extra 2 passive skill points it rewards. After that, it was also time for Weaver. Shortly after, I went into a Val side area in hopes of getting a Val Arc. Are you kidding? And now I get Val Animate Weapon immediately. Yeah, that's typical. That's typical. If you do not have a good wand during leveling, you can always trade in a normal wand with a magic or a rare chain belt and a blacksmith's whetstone to a vendor. This will result in a wand getting 10 to 39% spell damage. Thereafter, it was time for Fidelitas. From the reward, I picked up Herald of Thunder for some extra damage. I also bought Galvanic Field. The Galvanic Field skill applies a buff which helps your chance to shock, and after that will also do damage to the target and everything that surrounds the target. So I swapped out Orb of Storms with Galvanic Field. I also bought Wave of Conviction, which will help to reduce the enemy's lightning resistance. After that, I headed straight towards the Val Oversoul and looted a pretty nice helmet on the way. A gold rim? Are you serious? Okay, this is pretty lucky. The leveling will be pretty smooth now. Thereafter, it was time for the Val Oversoul to finish up Act 2. I ended Act 2 at level 26 with the following passive skill tree. I went straight to save Colvin to kill Piety, and from the reward I picked up Conductivity as my curse. Additionally, I looted a pretty decent shield with some spell damage and increased lightning damage. I also picked up Wrath as the next aura to increase my damage and swapped that out with Herald of Thunder. Already the build started to feel really smooth during the campaign. Next up, it was time for Piety to die once again. After killing Piety, I went back to Act 2 and picked up Elemental Focus and linked that to Galvanic Field. After that, I headed straight towards Dominus to finish up Act 3. I ended Act 3 at level 34 with the following passive skill tree. I started Act 4 by going to the normal lab. I ascended to an Elementalist and picked up Mastermind of Discord. This will help us to reduce the enemy's elemental resistances with our Wave of Conviction. I also looted my first 4-link that I could use, so I threw an Essence on it and got some nice life, energy shield and cold resistance. I went back to Act 3 and did the library quest to get my next support link. From the reward I picked up Lightning Penetration Support and bought Inspiration. I changed my Arc links to now be Arc, linked to Arcane Surge, Lightning Penetration Support, and Inspiration Support. I also bought Lightning Penetration and Inspiration for my Galvanic Field to now be Galvanic Field, linked to Elemental Focus, Lightning Penetration Support, and Inspiration. I also picked up Determination to have some better defenses. In Act 4, the build started to feel pretty good, so I started zooming through the act and headed straight towards killing D'Arezzo. On my way to King Keon, I looted a pretty decent 2-stone ring, with some strength, good life, and lightning resistance. After that, I headed straight towards Malachi to finish off Act 4. After killing Malachi, I was rewarded with Spell Echo. Additionally, I picked up the Lightning Golem to gain some extra cast speed. I swapped out Arcane Surge and put in Spell Echo to my Arc links. I ended Act 4 at level 43 with the following passive skill tree. Nothing of note happened during Act 5, except that I managed to die during the Innocence fight. After an embarrassing death, I looted a nice 4-link chest that I threw an Essence on, and got some minor life with several resistance modifiers on it. Thereafter, I headed straight towards Kitava and finished up Act 5. I ended Act 5 at level 49 with the following passive skill tree. I started Act 6 by clearing out the Twilight Strand to get access to most of the skill gems. From Lily, I bought Cast when damage taken and linked that to Immortal Call to get some better defenses. After that, I just plowed on through the act and headed straight towards the Brine Key to finish it up. I finished Act 6 at level 54 with the following passive skill tree. I started out Act 7 by looting a pretty nice wand that had some increased lightning damage, flat lightning damage to spell, cast speed, and critical strike chance for spells. I quickly went back to Act 6 to pick up Lightning Warp. This is a movement skill that I usually don't use, as I dislike the delayed movement that it has. However, it can be cast frequently, so I decided to test it out. I linked the skill to Less Duration and swapped it out with Flame Dash. I also bought Swift Affliction, but I did not have the correct socket colors to link it to Lightning Warp just yet. And I gotta admit, it didn't feel way too off. Except some minor gear upgrades, nothing more noteworthy happened during the rest of Act 7, so I just warped my way through the act. I ended Act 7 at level 58 with the following passive skill tree. After killing Arakali and started Act 8, I went and did the Crucible Lab. For the next 2 ascendancy points, I picked Heart of Destruction to get some more damage against unique enemies. After that, it was straight to the boss, Solaris and Lunaris, to kill them off and finish up Act 8. I ended Act 8 at level 64 with the following passive skill tree. In Act 9 and Act 10, there was nothing noteworthy that happened during these acts, except some minor gear upgrades. So I just warped my way through both of the acts, and after finishing most of Act 10, I went and did the Merciless Lab. For the next 2 ascendancy points, I picked up Bastion of Elements to get some more defenses, and after that, Kitava was up next. I finished the campaign in just over 7 hours, and I died 3 times. As usual, the tutorial is over and mapping is up next. Until then, stay sane, Exile.